Have you ever said anything to somebody that you instantly knew that you shouldn't have said? And you see their face kind of fall, and you almost like close your mouth and widen your eyes, like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I just said that out loud. It happens to all of us. And sometimes, in order to make things better, we have to eat a little crow or have a slice of humble pie. Hi, my name is K.A Bloch, and I am the award winning poet and author of 4 books that consist of poetry and prose. My channel is called The Practical Poet, and each week on my channel, I feature a different video poetry reading from one of my 4 books, or maybe even some new material. I also have a blog called thepracticalpoet.com, and on the blogs tab, you can find the written version of all of the poems that I do a video poetry reading on. So this week's video poetry reading comes from my second book called Scatter Seeds of Kindness, and this is a poem called Humble Pie. And recently on March 14th, we had Pi Day due to the mathematical equation pi, pi, and it reminded me of this poem. I know it's a completely different thing, right? But they're both the same word, pie and pie. And I thought, who doesn't love a nice slice of pie, except when it's humble pie? And we've all had to eat it at some point. It's also known as eating crow, but crow sounds kind of gross. Pie, humble pie sounds much better, even though they're essentially the same thing. And this poem came about several years ago when I did that thing that I mentioned in the intro, where I said something to somebody and I instantly knew that, oh my gosh, I went a step too far. Like, I should not have said that. Like, I've been thinking it for a while, and I just happened to open my mouth and the words popped out before I even could stop them. And it is those moments that we wish we had, like our computers, that we had that edit undo button, or we could backspace delete and have a little bit of a do over, or like on TV where there's like that 7-second pause where we can bleep it out. But this is real life, and these are real feelings, and we can't take back what we said, and we can't stop the person from feeling how they feel when those words kind of hit them like a dart. And again, this poem originated based on something that I had said, and I saw that I had hurt somebody, and I instantly thought of that childhood poem. Do you remember the poem "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never harm me"? Well, it's not true. We were lied to as kids. Words can harm, especially I think as we get older. I think when we're younger, that might have applied because we don't really think of the words so much. We don't really think of the impact. But by the time we're really older and we can understand what the words mean, or we can really try to analyze why were they said, or what did this person mean by them, they really do start to harm us. So maybe as kids, they don't hurt so much. We all kind of say horrible things to each other as kids. Even in school, I did a video poetry reading of The Bully, where I was called a terrible name by somebody in school. And so, and it did hurt me. I was a little bit older when it happened. Maybe had I been 5 or 6 or 7, it wouldn't have bothered me so much. But words do hurt, and they do harm. They do cause harm. And sometimes that harm is in the cost of the relationship that we had with the person. Sometimes they can't get past those words. And sometimes they just say, no, I'm sorry, I don't know where this came from. And sometimes it can lead to a deeper discussion or a deeper relationship, because maybe the person might say to you, why would you say that to me? Where did this come from? Have you had these feelings for a long time? Where did you finally find the guts or the courage to finally say it? And it can lead to a little bit of a deeper discussion, and you might come out with a little bit of a stronger relationship than you had before. You might really have some nice deep discussions and some nice topics, and maybe the person may even come to understand your viewpoint, and maybe they may see something in themselves that has been brewing in you for a long time, and they're finally able to see your point of view, and kind of see where the words came from, and why you happen to say them to them. But that's not always the case, and sometimes, like I mentioned, the other person just cannot get over it. They cannot seem to forgive. And speaking of forgiveness, My next video poetry reading is going to be the poem called Forgiveness, which is from my third book, and it's a follow-up to Humble Pie. So Humble Pie is written from the perspective of the person that said the words. For example, if I said it to somebody, Humble Pie is written from my perspective. The poem Forgiveness is written from the perspective of the person that received the harsh words and their process in processing the words and in trying to make that decision whether or not they choose to forgive the person for speaking it. So the two poems are kind of related on different points of view. So when I get around to doing the video poetry reading next week of Forgiveness, I will link it back to this video and I'll cross-reference the two so that if you wanted to check them both out. And I get into a little bit of in the prose where I always talk about kind of the inspiration or sometimes just my random thoughts. I talk a lot about the concept of forgiveness and what happens if we choose not to forgive somebody, or if we choose to forgive somebody, what does that mean? So interesting flip side of this poem, Humble Pie. But anyway, going back to the person, excuse me, got a little choke there, a little choked up. Going back to this particular poem, Humble Pie, written from the perspective of the person that spoke the harsh words, and in this case, you know, me or whoever's been in that situation. The other person may choose not to forgive. They may have their reasons and they may say, no, I just can't get past this. You know, somebody that truly loves me or somebody that truly cares about me would never say these words to me. And you can try to plead your case. You can try to, you know, eat a little bit of humble pie. You can, you know, try to do anything that you can, but sometimes things are out of our hands, right? And sometimes we have to just accept that maybe the relationship is at its end point. And that's something called a regret, an action regret. I have an upcoming video poetry reading of a poem called Regret that talks about the different types of regrets and how you know, these regrets that we carry them with us. And there's another poem. I'm talking a lot about cross-referencing poems today. But there's another poem called The Weight of Memories from this same book. It's actually one of the opening poems in this book. And I did a video poetry reading on the weight of memories and how we carry things around with us like baggage, like a backpack. And we can't let them go, and they do become heavy until finally we get to that point where we have to let it go, so that we can move on and we can live a better life, and we can look forward instead of always looking in the rearview mirror. So those are a couple of poetry readings that you may want to check out on my channel, talking about regret. I haven't done that one yet. I will post that one shortly. But The Weight of Memories is on my channel and talks about how, you know, we carry around those memories like a backpack, like a burden, and they can weigh us down. So that may be the case if the person in this that received the harsh words chooses not to forgive you or forgive somebody for something that they spoke. They may just have to live with that choice, unfortunately. And sometimes things cannot be repaired. It's nice if you can come out stronger on the other side, but it doesn't always happen that way. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the video poetry reading of Humble Pie. And again, this is written from the perspective of the person who spoke the harsh words and immediately knew that they had made a big mistake. So before I get into this video poetry reading, another quick sip of tea. It is going to rain here today. We have rain moving in, a wintry mix, if you will, even though we're almost to the end of March. Winter is still hanging on a little bit. So got a cup of tea here, got a fire going in just a few moments, and I'm going to enjoy a nice cozy afternoon, probably watching some silly TV. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get into this video poetry reading. Again, this is from Scatter Seeds of Kindness. The poem is called Humble Pie. And if you don't want to stick around for the video poetry reading, you can read the written copy. It is posted on my blog at thepracticalpoet.com/blog, and look for the poem Humble Pie. So put my glasses on here so I can see. And here we go. I'd like to send a sappy card as a way to make amends and to let you know deep in my heart, I'm so grateful that we're friends. How lucky I am that you are such a big part of my world. I'm sorry for the words I used when my thoughts became unfurled. I'd love to travel back in time or click edit undo. I wish I could backspace erase those things I said to you. I knew that I had gone too far as my words began to fumble. I could see when they sunk in for you and your face started to crumble. In that moment, guilt and fear took place inside my soul as I pictured my life without you there, and I felt an endless hole. We always hurt the ones we love. Isn't that what they say? But how much can we push and push before we push away? We always hurt the ones we love. Again, that's how it goes. Yet still, they seem to find the will to remain as friends, not foes. Do we deserve the second chance? At times, I'm not so sure. There has to be a limit as to how much they endure. In moments of such tension, we feel that we are doomed as remorse rushes to the scene to bandage up the wound. But the heart forgives when sometimes it shouldn't, and things can be rectified as healing starts and hugs take place and relief flows through inside. A lesson learned: words can hurt and actions can destroy. Feelings sometimes don't bounce back, and emotions are not a toy. Sticks and stones may break the bones, but words, they too can break. And being careless with our words can lead to this mistake. I am grateful for forgiveness in ways I can't define. I realize I hurt you, and I know I crossed a line. I'll treasure that forgiveness until the day I die. I make a promise to not repeat as I digest my humble pie. So that was the video poetry reading of Humble Pie. And again, I kind of cross-referenced the flip side poem, Forgiveness, and a little bit of coming attraction, if you will, I guess, a little spoiler, I guess, if you will, in this poem. The person on the other side does choose to forgive because the person in Humble Pie is grateful for that forgiveness. And they say they'll never do that again. They'll never take advantage of the person's friendship or love or anything again. They'll never hurt them in that way again. So it does look like in this case, those the two people involved were able to come to terms, and that's the case in my story too. The person that I said what I said to, we were able to, they were able to forgive me and move on, and forge a little bit of deeper conversations about what happened. So, but the person, the flip side in the poem Forgiveness that is coming up on a future video poetry reading, it was a process to go through, and they weren't sure in the poem that they were going to forgive. And they had to kind of work through that in their own head. And I think when we think about forgiveness, we think that we're condoning the behavior, that we're saying, okay, I'm going to let you off the hook. But really, who are we letting off the hook? More often than not, it's ourselves, so that we don't sink into that regret and the burden and the weight of the memories that I mentioned earlier. So with that, I'm going to leave you. I thank you very much for sticking with me for this video poetry reading. If you want to be notified of future video poetry readings, please make sure that you click the like and subscribe button, especially when I post the poem Forgiveness, so that you can see the flip side of Humble Pie. And be sure to check out my blog for the written video poetry, or for the written poems, and a little bit of the backstory, and sometimes just my random thoughts on the topic at hand. You can read everything there, the prose, and then followed by the poem there as well. So I thank you for joining me. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend, or whatever part of the week or the world that you're in. I hope the weather is lovely, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Bye.